So, what chain of events led you to this place? You didn't review the orientation packet and decide sub-level maintenance in a forgotten quadrant sounds like a rewarding career path. No, you are here because of a catastrophic system failure in your own life, most likely a cascade of them. Perhaps your credit score evaporated. Perhaps your social compliance rating dipped. Maybe you trusted the wrong data broker and discovered how persuasive automated enforcement drones can be. In any case, your topside existence concluded with a dilemma. Starve in a megacity underpass, or accept a berth on the transport vessel with a known history of life support malfunctions. For some, this was the only job offer. For others, it was the only option that didn't involve a re-education camp or organ reclamation. You might have been a downsized drone technician, a renegade data courier, or just someone who made the wrong joke in a corporate-mandated social mixer. Perhaps you were part of the system guard, with a heavy emphasis on "were," before you grasped that the only thing worse than being docked pay for a uniform infraction is being docked pay and then having to clean the sanitation unit anyway. But let's be honest, you probably weren't a volunteer. You were involuntarily relocated. Acquired, reassigned, asset stripped. One moment you're staring into your third synthale at a transit hub bar, and the next, a stun field, a jolt to the ribs, and boom, you're waking up in deep space, strapped to a conduit, someone's nutrient tube is leaking next to you, and a very large person with two bionic teeth is explaining that you're now company property. And before you ask why people didn't object, let me gently remind you. Most of the individuals conscripted for these assignments were already malnourished, sleep-deprived, or in crippling debt. To fight back required caloric surplus. You haven't had that in weeks. The average citizen couldn't afford off-brand footwear, let alone a personal defense system. Besides, resistance was often met with a hearty laugh and a casual jolt from a stun baton. Then again, perhaps your recruitment was technically official. The corporation sometimes provides choices. You're on a seized cargo hauler, terrified, surrounded by klaxons, and a man with a stained jumpsuit asks if you want to sign a lifetime contract or take a spacewalk without a helmet. Sure, that's a choice. Kinda like being offered two flavors of corporate downsizing. Some people did join willingly. Not many, but some. Ex-miners sick of low oxygen and high quotas. Prisoners promised a clean slate in exchange for service. Desperate souls who saw glossy ads of vibrant new worlds and thought, how bad could it be? Those people didn't last, not because they were weak, but because they had hope. Hope is a liability in a deep space operation. It makes you hesitate. It makes you dream. And dreaming gets your oxygen supply accidentally rerouted during a maintenance cycle. You may have told yourself, at least I'm free now. I'm not under the corporate thumb. I answer to no one. How quaint. You now answer to the shift supervisor, a man whose leadership style could be described as a power surge in a damaged logic board. He decides when you eat your nutrient paste, when you enter your sleep pod, and whether your punishment involves plasma burns, atmospheric exposure, or just public humiliation and something vaguely referred to as the recycler. This operation is often described as a meritocracy. That's cute. Yes, some teams technically voted on things, especially which asteroid to mine next, or who gets the biggest share of the protein vat scrapings. But don't mistake group consensus for freedom. You're free to voice your opinion once loudly, and then you're free to be assigned to filter cleaning duty until you forget your own designation number. The truth is, you didn't end up here because you were brave or noble or born under a twin sun. You're here because you are expendable. The system chewed you up, and this tin can was the last thing that didn't immediately eject you into the void. You're not a pioneering hero. You're not even the hero's cousin's janitor's service bot. You're just another number on a corrupted data slate of bodies. And now, you're aboard. No planet in sight, no rescue coming, no 5 easy steps to escape a corporate indenture pamphlet tucked in your waistband. Just you, the void, and 40 to 60 other unfortunate souls pretending this is better than the alternative. Spoiler, it's not. So, you've been acquired, conscripted, or just thoroughly conned. You're stuck on a vessel that smells like ionized metal and crushed ambition, and you're still clinging to the vague hope that maybe, just maybe, the people around you are at least halfway decent. Let's ruin that hope together. Meet the crew, starting with Old Glitch. He's called that because his cybernetic eye is 35 years old and looks 80. His skin has the texture of recycled packaging material, and his mustache appears to have partially petrified. He's survived hull breaches, radiation storms, at least 2 mutinies, and a mysterious incident involving a high-ranking executive, a plasma torch, and a wheel of cheese. He's not wise, he's just too stubborn to be decommissioned. And he smells like someone tried to sterilize a surface using ozone and despair. Next is Whistler. Nobody knows his real designation, he just whistles constantly. Cheerful corporate jingles, haunting static bursts, the occasional off-key melody that might be a warning. He sharpens scrap metal while doing it, not his own scrap metal, other people's, usually while maintaining disturbingly direct eye contact. He hasn't blinked since the last system reboot. Your sleep pod is next to scraps. He's called that because he eats them. Moldy nutrient bars, discarded thermal boot liners, and once a piece of insulation foam he mistook for a pancake. He has nutritional deficiencies, a fungal infection, and the unsettling ability to sleep anywhere, including in a zero-G maintenance shaft. He snores like a dying atmospheric processor and hums in his sleep. He's missing 2 fingers and doesn't remember why. Then there's Half Chip Jenkins. He lost 1 bio-implant in a gambling dispute and allegedly lost the other half of his mind somewhere off the rings of Saturn. He mutters constantly, mostly threats against maintenance drones and something he calls the Void Wraith. He believes the ship is haunted, and he's not wrong. He might be the haunting. Torque is the engine chief. She has the build of a cargo loader and the voice of someone who gargled gravel. Schematics are tattooed over every inch of visible skin, including one that reads, "Don't ask," across her knuckles. She once bit a man during a dispute over a power conduit and has never apologized.
She holds the crew arm wrestling record, as well as the record for most threats made before the first work cycle. Then we have Guts. That's not his real name. It's what he yelled when he tried to intimidate a rival salvage crew and forgot the rest of his sentence. He hasn't lived it down. His real talent is vomiting with incredible accuracy during artificial gravity fluctuations, often into other people's helmets. He keeps a pet cyber rat named Reginald, which he talks to like a therapist. Reginald is the most stable member of the crew. Cobbler used to be a synth fabricator. He mentions this constantly, despite wearing no boots. He's tried to repair 3 pairs of boots using sealant and regret, and each attempt has ended in catastrophic chemical burns. He still insists he's a master craftsman. Nobody's sure if he actually worked in a fabrication shop or just loitered near one. French Tom is not French, not even a little. He's from the Leeds exclusion zone. But he once said bonjour during a bout of oxygen deprivation, and it stuck. He's the navigator. Or at least he was, until the incident with the nav computer, the genetically engineered goat, and the sudden detour into an asteroid field. Now he mostly tells stories about cosmic whales and accuses the distant nebulae of lying. Mute Sam is not mute. He just doesn't like people. He communicates via grunts, aggressive pointing, and the occasional notes scrawled in grease on a bit of bulkhead panel. He's unnervingly efficient at securing cables and deeply enjoys calibrating laser drills, probably too much. Little Billy is 6 feet tall and built like an exosuit. The nickname is either ironic or a cruel joke from a captain with a death wish. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, it's usually about engine fires. No one asks questions. Billy gets a wide berth, especially near the power core. Then there's Smokey, who constantly smells like burning insulation, despite nobody ever seeing him near a fire. He once claimed to be a cook. Then he served something that made 4 men hallucinate, and 1 man permanently believes he's married to the main reactor. He now stirs things in a container no one's allowed to look into. Patch wears an eye patch, but not because he's missing an eye. He just likes the look. Sometimes he switches it from left to right mid-conversation, depending on the lighting. It's deeply unsettling. He also carries 3 outdated laser pistols and doesn't trust any of them, referring to them as the lads and blaming them for his frequent outbursts. And finally, the captain. But we'll talk about him later. For now, just know that he's watching, always watching, often from odd places, like the observation dome at 3 a.m., whispering to the void. Together, these misfits, degenerates, and semi-sentient warning signs form the backbone of your new life. They're violent, unstable, and deeply, profoundly unwell. And they are now your closest companions. Trust is rare. Loyalty is conditional. Everyone's armed, everyone's tired, and everyone's been backstabbed at least once, professionally or otherwise. But for all their madness, these people are survivors. They've outlived corporate collapses, hostile takeovers, exotic plagues, and at least one rumor of a sentient nebula. They might smell like fermented despair and scream in their sleep, but they know how to pilot, how to fight, how to live. Barely. Welcome aboard. This is your home now. It has engines, it holds pressure most of the time. Technically, it qualifies as a ship. Emotionally, it's a damp metal coffin that groans louder than the crew. She's got a name, probably something intimidating like the Retribution or the Void Shadow. Deep space crews love names that sound like they've already caused an incident. She wasn't built for comfort, she wasn't even built well. This vessel is likely a decommissioned freighter hastily converted into a long-haul vessel by removing everything useful and replacing it with anxiety. The floor plates groan when nobody's moving. The hull leaks constantly, not dramatically, just enough to make everything damp. Your clothes, your food, your soul. The corridor is a minefield of loose wires, coiled tubing, and the occasional escaped lab specimen that no one remembers bringing aboard. It's also slick, always slick, with condensation, hydraulic fluid, nutrient paste, or something that looks like it used to be a crewman. You don't walk across it, so much as shuffle like a haunted cleaning drone, praying you don't slip and land face first on an exposed power conduit. In the lower decks, things get worse. The ceiling is low enough to humble your posture permanently. The air is thick with the smell of ozone, recycled sweat, and old rotting insulation. There's a scent, not one you can describe. It's more of a presence, like something crawled into the ventilation system and died, then changed its mind halfway through and decided to haunt the place instead. Your living space? It's called the barracks. You share it with strange alien vermin, nutrient-paced weevils, and 30 to 40 equally miserable human beings. There's no privacy, not even a curtain.
Just sleep pods stacked so close together that if your neighbor rolls over, you both wake up confused and bruised. There's no mattress, no pillow, no personal shelf for your data pad and scented candles. Just a gel foam sling suspended by magnetic clamps and trust issues. You're encouraged not to sleep on your back, not because it's bad for you, but because the dripping ceiling will baptize your face every 10 minutes with condensation that might just be coolant from the deck above. Storage. That's just a word for put it wherever it won't immediately corrode or catch fire. Power cells are stored next to crates of freeze-dried meat, emergency lights hang near flammable lubricant. The stimulant supply is stored in 3 different locations because the last guy who kept it all in one place is still being used as an example. The latrine is a vacuum tube at the back of the ship with a small opening. You hang your bare bottom over the void and hope for stable gravity and forgiveness. Wipe with a sonic cloth, sterilize in UV light, repeat until you stop caring. Privacy? None. Judgment? Constant. The cameras have seen things. The galley is a pitiful excuse for a kitchen, a heat plate bolted to the floor, tended by a cook with a nervous tick, and no remaining taste buds. Most meals are prepared with one spice, unidentifiable. If it smells edible and doesn't move, it's dinner. If it moves, it's tomorrow's dinner. Navigation equipment is sparse. There might be a compass, a cracked viewport, and a star chart that predates the invention of reliable FTL travel. You don't know where you are. The captain probably doesn't either, but that's what counts until you hit a planet or another ship. Every part of the vessel requires constant repair.
Ropes fray, sails tear, the mast cracks, wood warps, nails rust. It's like living inside a large, angry wooden toddler that's always on the verge of a tantrum. Maintenance is nonstop, and by maintenance we mean yelling at things and hitting them with hammers until they stop leaking. Then there's the sound. The creaking never stops, the groaning, the flapping sails, the snap of ropes under tension, all layered over the ocean's eternal sloshing. It's like being trapped inside a giant wet musical instrument played by Poseidon's drunk nephew. You'll learn to sleep through it eventually, or not. And the ship is always moving. Not just the obvious rolling and pitching. No, this is a full-body experience. It sways, it shudders, it jolts without warning. You will develop space legs. You will also develop space nausea, space headaches, and the ability to vomit into a zero-G bag without missing a beat. This ship is your world now. You'll live on it, bleed on it, maybe die on it. It is not majestic. It is not romantic. It is not the stuff of ballads. It is an arthritic metal death crap held together with duct tape, salt, and bad decisions. But for a spacer, it's everything. So it's the end of a long day. You've hauled cables, eaten something that may have been algae in a former life, and narrowly avoided being electrocuted by a man arguing with a flickering light panel. You're exhausted, soaked to the bone, and your back feels like it was used as a cargo ramp. Naturally, you look forward to sleep. That's adorable. Your bed is a sleep pod, not the breezy, Instagram-worthy kind strung between 2 palm trees with a tropical drink in hand. No, this is a narrow, scratchy tube of polymer suspended in a part of the ship so cramped it technically qualifies as a closet. If you roll too far to one side, you'll tumble onto your bunkmate, or worse, the floor, which is currently wet with something. You don't have your own space. Privacy doesn't exist here. You sleep in a room packed with dozens of other people, stacked up like cargo, swinging gently in the ship's ceaseless rhythm. Sometimes the pods sway in unison, like a synchronized ballet performed by meat sacks. Other times they sway out of sync, and someone's nose meets someone else's elbow. Again, breathing is competitive. The air down here is thick with body odor, recycled air, and a hint of alien pest droppings. If someone farts, and they will, the scent just kind of hovers, trapped by the low ceiling and your dwindling will to live. It's a hot, damp blanket of humanity's worst emissions. There's no lighting, just darkness. Or maybe the faint flicker of a personal data slate someone's wrist turning on in defiance of both safety regulations and common sense. That faint glow reveals shapes, shadows, and the knowledge that one of your crewmates is staring directly at you while chewing something. You do not want to know what. Noise is constant. Snoring is the default setting. Some people mumble in their sleep, others scream, some sleep with one eye open. One man, you're fairly certain, is composing cosmic dirges in his dreams and moaning the chorus. You'll learn to sleep through it, or you'll cry quietly into your sleep pod until unconsciousness takes pity on you. Bedding? That's optimistic. You get your pod, maybe a thermal blanket if it hasn't been used as a cleaning rag yet, maybe a lumpy pillow fashioned from spare insulation. If you're cold, you shiver. If you're hot, you sweat. If you both, congratulations, you've developed void fever. Don't worry, that's only fatal sometimes. Clothing is your pajamas, also your work clothes, also your funeral attire if things go poorly. There's no laundry service, no fresh linens, just recycled sweat, grime, and the vague hope that one day the mildew in your jumpsuit will achieve sentience and walk off on its own. You are always damp. The ceiling drips, the walls sweat, the plates beneath your pod squelch in a way that suggests a small ecosystem is forming. You've stopped asking what's wet and started hoping it's just water. That's your nightly optimism. Pests? Yes, the pod bay area is their playground. Alien mites, space fleas, cyber rats, spiders, things that shouldn't exist but do. You might wake up with strange bite marks or with something small and judgmental making eye contact with you from inside your boot. If you scream, no one reacts. That's just a standard Tuesday. On particularly rough transits, the ship rocks violently and pods swing like pendulums. You'll hear bodies colliding midair. A person might be flung from their pod and land with a thud and a groan. Nobody helps. Helping means getting up. And nobody gets up unless there's a hull breach or a ghost. Some ships have sleep shifts. Too many people, not enough pods. So you rotate 4 hours here, 4 hours there. If someone doesn't wake up when it's your turn, you drag them out gently if they're your friend, violently if they snore like a malfunctioning engine. If you're lucky, you dream of a green planet. If you're realistic, you dream of falling tools or your captain turning into a squid and demanding you swap the void. Sleep is not restful here, it's damage control. You wake up just a little more broken than the day before. But hey, you're not alone. Misery loves company, and you're surrounded by snoring, scratching, half-dead company. Welcome to deep space rest. May your sleep be brief and your pod latches hold. So you've survived another day in the void. You've hauled cables, dodged a fistfight over a stolen protein bar, and successfully avoided falling off the waste ejection plank during high orbit. Congratulations! You've earned a meal. You will regret this. Deep space cuisine isn't really cuisine. It's more of an endurance test. The ship doesn't have a chef. It has a cook, who may or may not have once boiled old uniforms for soup. Ingredients are limited to whatever doesn't rot immediately. Spoiler, everything rots immediately. Let's start with nutrient paste. It's your food substitute. Picture a cracker made of flour, water, salt, and heartbreak, then baked until it could stop a small projectile. If you're lucky, it's just hard. If you're unlucky, it's alive. Space weevils love nutrient paste. You'll learn to tap it on the table to see if anything crawls out. If it does, you flick the bug off and eat it anyway. Extra protein. Next up, salt-cured protein block. This is not the crispy bacon delight of your fantasies. It's a gray, rubbery block of something preserved in enough salt to give a large animal a cardiac arrest. You'll boil it, you'll chew it, it will fight you the entire time. By week 2, you'll start having nightmares about it chasing you. Vegetables. That's adorable. If there are any, they're long-dead hydroponic experiments. Potatoes sprout into new terrifying life forms.
Onions go soft and start leaking. If someone gets an apple, it's either a miracle or a trap. Malnutrition isn't just a threat, it's an inevitability. Gums swell, teeth loosen. Eventually, you're gumming your salt-cured protein block like a saddled space turtle. Water, you ask? Technically, yes, but it's stored in barrels. Barrels that used to hold machine lubricant, cleaning solvents, or some mysterious fluid the crew refuses to discuss.
By the time you drink it, it's warm, cloudy, and tastes like someone washed their socks in it, which in fairness, they probably did. To make the water slightly less horrifying, you mix it with cheap grain alcohol. Not good stuff, industrial grade stuff, the kind that burns your throat and your dreams. You'll drink it to kill the taste, the bacteria, and your short-term memory. Dehydration is constant. You're always either too thirsty or too drunk to care. The cook occasionally makes stew. This is a generous term. It is mostly a boiling slurry of protein scraps, salted fat, paste crumbs, and something unidentifiable that may have once been part of an alien fish. If it has bones, great, you've got crunch. If it doesn't, you probably just ate part of someone's boot sole. On good days, and by good we mean less horrifying, the crew catches some kind of space fish. These are grilled over an open plasma flame, seasoned with soot and sarcasm. On bad days, you catch nothing, and the cook starts eyeing the cyber rats, or the lab goats, or the contents of a mysterious container labeled "Do Not Open, Jim." Speaking of rats, yes, you'll eat them. Not often, not proudly, but when the food runs low, and it always does, the line between vermin and entree gets blurry. You tell yourself it's like chicken. It isn't. But lying to yourself is a core survival skill in space. Spices. Don't be ridiculous. The only seasoning you get is salt. Salt in your food, salt in your wounds, salt in your nightmares. Occasionally someone hoards a stash of pepper or dried herbs from a station-side visit. They become gods. Everyone sucks up to them until the stash runs out or gets stolen. Hygiene in the galley is theoretical. The cook has one knife. It cuts protein, bread, cables, toenails. Same blade, same rag to wipe it. The pot gets cleaned maybe once a month, or when it catches fire. Spoiled protein isn't discarded. It's boiled longer. That's the strategy. Just cook the disease out. Dining etiquette? There isn't any. You eat with your hands or your utility tool. You slurp, gnaw, and occasionally fight over scraps. Meals are loud, chaotic, and frequently interrupted by threats. Someone always spills something. Someone else always makes eye contact while licking a protein bone. Meals are rationed. You don't get seconds. If you're late, you get nothing. If you complain, you're invited to have a chat with the cook. No one knows what happens during these chats. People return changed, quiet, suspiciously full. But here's the worst part. You get used to it. You stop noticing the texture. You stop asking what's in the stew. You start missing the flavorless protein blocks when they're gone. You'll dream of them at night, cradled in your pod, whispering, "At least I knew what you were." So enjoy your meal, Spacer. Born to pity. And may the space weevils be merciful tonight. Let's talk about cleanliness, or rather the permanent and deafening absence of it. Because you, dear Spacer, are filthy. Not in the cute, rugged, and space-worn way, in the walking petri dish with legs way. You are, at this point, mostly skin, stink, and regret. Bathing. That's not part of the schedule. There's no daily dip and a blue nebula while singing space shanties. There's no soap unless someone liberated a bar from a station-side brothel. And even then, it's guarded like treasure. Showers, please. The only running water here is recycled condensation, and that's if the life support system is in a generous mood. Occasionally, if the ship is stable and the crew hasn't mutinied in the past 48 hours, you'll be allowed to jump overboard for a wash, which is just floating naked near dangerous radiation fields. You come out wet, a little cleaner, and slightly more paranoid than before. Someone always jokes about retracting the tether. It's not always a joke, but for the most part, you just marinate. You sit in your own grease, your clothes grow stiff, your hair takes on the texture of coarse wiring, your skin develops new and interesting textures. Your smell becomes a weapon. You stop caring. Everyone smells. Some days it's the only thing you all have in common. Mites. Oh yes, constant companions. They live in your hair, in your jumpsuit, in your pod. You'll pick them off your skin like raisins from bad porridge. You'll give them names out of boredom and despair. Sometimes the crew shaves their heads to fight them. Sometimes they just burn their clothes and scream. There are no toilets. You already know about the vacuum tube.
That single piece of hardware jutting off the back of the ship where you squat and try not to think about how indignant this is. If the ship is unstable, you'll miss. If someone's using it ahead of you, you wait or you don't. Nobody wins. Toilet paper? No. Sonic cloths? Maybe a scrap of insulation if you're lucky. Your hand if you're desperate. You rinse it in recycled water and pretend you just abandoned all standards of civilization. Then you go back to eating with that same hand. Welcome to the circle of life, Space Edition. Your teeth. You still have some, for now. There's no toothbrush, no minty rinse, no floss. You might use a frayed wire. You might chew nutrient paste. Mostly you just let nature reclaim your molars. Gums swell, teeth loosen, eventually they fall out, and you slurp your meals through your remaining dignity. Infections thrive here. Scratches become abscesses. Bug bites turn septic. You'll get boils, you'll get rashes. Someone will have trench foot, even though you're not in a trench. That's just what happens when your boots are always wet and your socks are theoretical. If you're wounded, the cleaning process involves sterile saline, a rag someone used to wipe stew off the console, and a silent prayer to whichever cosmic entity hasn't cursed you yet. Stitches are performed with high tensile wire. Antiseptic? Oh, your doctor is cheap booze and indifference. Then there's the smell. Oh, the smell. It follows you, clings to you, becomes part of your identity. A mix of sweat, ozone, mold, and dried alien fish.
You become nose blind to it. But make no mistake, small maintenance drones veer away. Station-side populations gag. Even the cyber rats keep their distance on a bad day. Clothing is never washed. It's beaten against a bulkhead or rinsed in recycled water, which just adds crusty to filthy. Once your jumpsuit can stand up by itself, it's time to burn it and steal someone else's. Most of your wardrobe has more holes than fabric anyway. Feet, a battlefield. Constantly wet, constantly sore. Toenails blacken, peel, and vanish. Blisters pop, then refill. You sleep with your boots off only to find something has moved in during the night. Fungal infections aren't a possibility, they're a guarantee. There is no hygiene, there is only survival. You don't clean, you rot slowly. Your body becomes a history book of every wound, bite, and festering rash you've acquired since boarding this floating disease barge. You are decomposing in real time. So yes, spacers may have feared vacuum exposure and airlock malfunctions, but nothing terrified them quite like a mirror and a good long sniff. You thought the captain ran this ship? That's sweet, but no, your true commander is disease. It's with you always, in your water, in your wounds, in the wheezing cough of the person who sleeps 6 inches from your face. You don't sail the void so much as drift from one microbial disaster to the next. Let's start with the classic space scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C. Sounds simple, right? Just eat an orange. Except you haven't seen a real fruit in months, not a citrus wedge, not a sprig of parsley. Your diet is pure salt, starch, and hope. First your gums bleed, then your teeth loosen. Eventually they fall out like sad little dominoes, and you're left trying to chew dried protein with your gums flapping like loose shutters in a gale. Your joints swell, your legs ache, your skin bruises if someone breathes on you too hard. You bleed from places you forgot you had blood vessels, and still the cook insists that the stew is nourishing. You'd protest, but your tongue has swollen to the size of a boot heel. Next up, space dysentery. Oh yes, the great leveler. Rich, poor, old, young, everyone gets to poop themselves to death on equal footing. Caused by drinking contaminated water, which on this ship is all water. You'll know it's hit when your stomach starts rumbling like engine fire, and you sprint or stagger to the waste ejection tube only to discover it's occupied for the next 20 horrifying minutes. Then there's fever. Any fever. Pick your poison. Void sickness, radiation fever, alien malaria, they're all invited. Symptoms include sweating, chills, shaking, hallucinations, and the conviction that the ship's antenna is whispering to you.
And if it's not fever, it's probably plague. Because yes, even the Black Death has been known to catch a ride on a spaceship. Nothing like a spontaneous body count to keep morale spicy. Skin infections are constant, boils the size of chicken eggs, rashes that spread like gossip, wounds that never heal, just ooze with increasing enthusiasm. There's a person on your crew who has had the same sore on his legs since Mars. He named it. It's doing better than he is. Mites and space fleas don't just live on you, they thrive on you. They take reunions. They take extended family vacations across your thighs. You scratch until you bleed, and then you scratch some more. The itching becomes part of you. At some point you stop noticing, which is arguably worse. You might notice lung rot. Someone is always coughing. Deep, wet, lung-shaking coughs that echo through the corridors like ominous drum beats. The kind of cough that comes with a bit of blood and a lot of denial. It's just the recycled air, they say while coughing their lung into a waste receptacle. Then there's venereal disease, because every time you reach a station, at least half the crew stumbles ashore in search of temporary affection and permanent consequences. Syphilis, gonorrhea, the mysterious Martian itch. You'll know it's caught on when people start limping and cursing their own anatomy between sobs. Treatment? There isn't any. Not really. The ship has a med tech, which is a generous title for a person with a rusty scalpel and a deeply unhealthy fascination with alien leeches. If you're lucky, he pours cheap alcohol on it. If you're unlucky, he starts humming while cutting. Sometimes diseases sweep through the ship so fast that they take out a quarter of the crew in a week. The bodies are ejected into space, wrapped in a bit of thermal blanket, mumbled over, and pitched into the deep. No funerals, no markers, just a whoosh and the quiet acknowledgement that it's your pod now. Contagion isn't avoided, it's expected. You share utensils, water, bedding, air. Someone sneezes and 6 people get fevers. You develop a sixth sense for spotting illness. You start avoiding the person who's sweating through their jumpsuit in the cold. You give the wheezing person a wide berth, not because you're afraid, but because there's only so much dying you can handle before it interrupts your pod schedule. Sometimes the sick are put aside, quarantined in the cargo hold, wrapped in blankets, told to rest, which really means, please die quietly so we can finish lunch. And if they don't die fast enough, someone makes a decision, a quiet one, with a pillow or a length of cable. But the worst part, you get used to it. The smell of sickness, the groans, the way someone stops responding when you shake them awake. It stops shocking you. It just becomes background noise, like the hum of the engine, like the cyber rats. So yes, the void might kill you, and plasma fire might splatter you, but if you really want to know what's going to end your spacer career, check your gums. So you've been scrubbing decks, dodging cyber rats, and losing teeth to malnutrition. All the usual spacer hobbies. But today's different. Today, the long-range scanner screams something incomprehensible from the bridge. The captain smiles like a man who just remembered where he left his rage, and the ship starts to turn. You're going into battle, not a heroic duel, not a cinematic ballet of laser fire and grace. No, this is chaos.
Screaming, smoke, fire, and the constant, unrelenting awareness that metal is splintering somewhere very close to your internal organs. First comes the prep. Everyone runs around pretending to know what they're doing. Laser cannons are powered up, power is rerouted, pistols are charged, some of them correctly. The deck is sprayed with sand to catch the blood. Yes, they do that on purpose. It's called being practical. Your heart is racing. Your hands are shaking. You're handed a plasma cutter, dull, nicked, heavy. It smells like ozone and previous owners. Someone clips a laser pistol to your waist. You ask how to use it. They laugh. Then they hand you a boarding axe and pat you on the back like a man sending his pet into a thunderstorm. Then you see it, the other ship. It's coming fast. Weapon ports open. Banners are flying. They're yelling too. And just like that, the plasma bolts start flying. Not politely,
Not with warning, they explode into the side of your ship like thunder having a tantrum. Metal flies. You hear someone scream. You don't know if it's you. Shrapnel is deadly. You expected laser beams and bullets, not jagged chunks of titanium flying into your thigh like angry darts. People lose eyes, fingers, chunks of face. The ship moans louder than the crew. Smoke starts to pour across the deck. Your lungs fill with propellant and panic. Then, boarding. Magnetic grappling hooks thud onto the hull. Tethers fly across. People yell and swing from one deck to another like angry, unshaven monkeys. You're shoved forward. Time to kill or be killed. And you're still not entirely sure which end of the axe is the business end. You leap. You land badly. Someone immediately tries to stab you. You flail with your plasma cutter. It clangs off armor, or maybe a crate. You don't know. There's blood on your sleeve, and you don't know whose it is. You're shouting. Everyone's shouting. The air is so full of noise, it becomes a kind of silence. Combat is not clean. There are no rules. It's elbows, teeth, knees, axes, pistols, screaming, slipping on guts, and getting hit in the head with things that should not be airborne. You lose your helmet. You lose your plasma cutter. You gain a knife from somewhere and just start jabbing in the general direction of not you. The smoke is blinding. Guns fire. Cannons boom. A person runs past you on fire. Someone gets shot and doesn't notice. Another person gets shot and collapses like a sack of onions. The deck is slick with blood and coolant. Your feet slide. You nearly fall. Someone grabs you, snarls, and then vanishes under a boot. You finally stab someone. It's not graceful. It's not brave. It's desperate, clumsy, and followed by retching. The person groans. Then you're shoved aside and someone else finishes the job with a pistol to the face. You're crying, or maybe sweating, or both. You're not sure anymore. There is no honor, no gallantry, just survival. The people who win are the ones who move fast, hit hard, and don't stop. You're covered in grime. Your ears are ringing. Someone's screaming in your face. You don't know if it's an order or a threat. You nod anyway. Eventually, the tide turns. You're winning! Allegedly. The enemy starts retreating. Some jump overboard, others surrender. You want to celebrate, but your arms are shaking, your legs are jelly, and your stomach is threatening to mutiny. The aftermath is worse. The groans of the dying, the stench of blood and burned propellant. The realization that some of those bodies are people you recognized, people who snored in the pod next to you, who complained about nutrient paste with you, who once offered you a spork with only minor threats attached. Victory doesn't feel like glory. It feels like exhaustion soaked in smoke and blood. You slump down next to a splintered crate, and someone hands you a dented flask. You drink. It burns. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. And then the captain yells again, "There's another ship on the horizon!" You stand up on legs that no longer want to stand, pick up a weapon you barely remember dropping, and prepare to do it all over again. Welcome to corporate warfare. No medals, no honor, just teeth-gritting, blood-spitting survival. One horrifying moment to the next. So, you've survived battle. Congratulations! Statistically speaking, you shouldn't have, but you did. You're standing, or at least swaying, blood-soaked, bruised, and full of questions. Chief among them, is that my blood, and should my arm be bending that way? Welcome to the next chapter of corporate misery. Injury. Because you don't just die outright. That would be too merciful. No, first you suffer. Then you really suffer. Then you consider chewing off your own leg and calling it self-care. First things first. There's no medical officer. There's a med tech, sure, but that term is being used as loosely as the bandages he ties with one hand while swigging stimulants with the other. He's not trained. He's not clean. He once mistook radiation burns for a sunburn and shrugged it off. What does he have in his medical kit? A laser scalpel, a rusty knife, some suture, a needle that looks like it came from a fabricator's box, a bottle of alcohol for him, not you, and a strip of synth leather for you to bite while he removes body parts you were really hoping to keep. Let's talk amputation. You get shot in the arm, stabbed in the leg, or develop an infection that starts to smell like spoiled nutrient paste. That limb's got a date with destiny and a laser scalpel. There's no anesthesia, no morphine, no chloroform. Just 3 other crew members holding you down while the med tech mutters something unhelpful like, "This might sting." It doesn't sting. It burns. It rips. It drills pain into your skull like a space worm into a bulkhead. You scream. You bite the synth leather. You cry. Or you pass out, which is honestly the best case scenario. If you're lucky, you wake up without your leg. If you're unlucky, you don't wake up at all. Infection is inevitable. The tools weren't clean. The rag wasn't clean. The med tech's hands weren't clean. There's probably a cyber rat watching horrified from the corner, and it's cleaner than the table you're lying on. The wound festers. You get a fever. You shake. You hallucinate. Sometimes the limb rots. Sometimes your insides do. What about broken bones? They're set manually. That is, someone grabs your arm, says hold still, and then yanks until it makes a sound you will never forget. Splints are made from spare bits of metal. Bandages are made from rags. Pain relief is still cheap alcohol. Always cheap alcohol. There is no plan B. Even minor injuries, scratches, splinters, cable burns can become death sentences. Why? Because you're never clean. The ship is never clean. The air is full of ozone and misery.
And your blood is basically an open buffet for every bacterium on board. There are no stitches unless your guts are falling out. And even then, they might just push things back in and tie a belt around your waist. If something's bleeding, you press a cloth on it and hope. If it keeps bleeding, you press harder. If it still bleeds, well, at least the void sharks will be full. Burns, you fall into a hot engine fire or take a plasma flash to the face. You get slapped with a handful of lubricant, maybe some ash, and a pat on the back. You'll toughen up. Never mind the blisters or the smell of cooking skin. You've got a job to do, crispy or not. Sometimes a crewmate offers advice, homemade remedies, chewing nutrient paste, urine-soaked rags, bloodletting. Hold this alien eel to your forehead. You try anything, everything. Nothing works. And somehow it's still better than another visit to the ship's medtech who now refers to you as repeat business. You might survive, you might not. It's not based on how bad the wound is, it's based on luck. Sheer, dumb luck. You can get stabbed in the gut and live, or you can trip on a cable, scrape your knee, and die of fever 3 days later. It's a medical lottery with no winners and no refunds. Mental trauma, that's cute. If you flinch at loud noises or cry at night, you're told to toughen up. If you keep crying, someone throws a blanket over your head and says it's time to man up or shut up. Therapy is punching something until the world stops spinning. If you do die, your body gets wrapped in a tarp and ejected into the void with minimal ceremony. Maybe someone says a few words. Maybe they just loot your pockets and push. The medtech sighs and sharpens his scalpel for the next customer. So yes, spacer life is dangerous, but not because of battle, not because of radiation storms. It's because once you get hurt, the best case scenario is you live worse. Ah, profit. The reason you signed up or were coerced into signing up in the first place. Visions of overflowing cargo holds, glittering rare minerals, alien artifacts encrusted with jewels, and a genetically modified monkey wearing a tiny crown. Spoiler, that's not real. None of it is real. The only thing buried out here is your sense of optimism. Let's start with the basics. Most spacers never saw real wealth. Real wealth, not a rusted toolkit or a dented titanium spoon. Actual containers filled with refined ores. Rare, very rare. Most of the vessels you'll plunder are cargo haulers carrying nutrient paste, textiles, salt-cured fish, or barrels of industrial lubricant that leak and smell like old syrup and broken dreams. Sometimes you'll get lucky and snag a ship carrying rare spices or high-grade fuel. Hooray! That's not wealth, that's inventory. And if you're picturing neat little piles of refined minerals, you've clearly never helped load a cargo hold full of live chickens and crates of explosive chemicals.
When you do manage to take something shiny, it doesn't go to you. It goes to the captain first, always, then the quartermaster. Then it gets divided based on the corporate equivalent of a spreadsheet designed by a drunk AI. Officers get more, the cook gets less, you get what's left after someone forgets how to count. And even then, if there's anything valuable, it gets melted down, pawned off, or traded for supplies at the next station. You'll never touch it, never smell it. It vanishes into the ether of corporate bookkeeping, which mostly involves someone muttering, "Trust me, pal," and writing numbers on a soggy scrap of synth paper. Let's talk about hidden caches. You've heard the stories. X marks the spot. A hidden manifest. A specific asteroid and a shovel. All lies. Spacers didn't hide their loot. Why would they? They spent it as fast as they stole it. On cheap booze, gambling, synthetic companionship, more cheap booze, and poor decisions involving alien livestock. A hidden cache is just money you can't drink. Manifests are rare. If they existed, they were badly drawn and usually stained with something alarming. Most treasure maps were created decades after the fact by writers who thought space exploration needed more cryptographic mystery and fewer rotting teeth. And then there's the share system. Technically, spacer crews were democratic. Shares were allocated based on rank and role, but if the haul was terrible, and it usually was, your share might be 5 credits, a half-eaten nutrient bar, and a punch in the ribs, not necessarily in that order. Some spacers became rich, a tiny, statistically irrelevant handful. They were either captains, lucky mutineers, or absolute sociopaths who outlived their rivals. The rest died poor or spent their last credits on bad synthale and worse tattoos in a station they never left alive. You'll loot people's clothes, their boots, sometimes their teeth. If someone's got cybernetic fillings, out they come. It's not wealth, it's recycling. If you think being a spacer is glamorous, wait until you see a person pry out a molar with a multi-tool and yell, "Profit!" Once in a while, you'll find jewelry, a locket, a ring, maybe a necklace. It's covered in blood, sticky with someone's final moments, and probably cursed. You clean it, you try to sell it. The fence lowballs you. You accept anyway, because you need money for protein paste and cheap booze, and you lost your last boot during a knife fight with a genetically modified pig. There's no bank, no savings account. What you earn, you carry until it's stolen, because spacers steal from everyone, including each other. You sleep with a credit chip and wake up with a note that says, "Thanks, pal." You accuse someone, hope you like fighting for the amusement of a bored crew. And the biggest lie of all, that wealth makes you free. It doesn't. Even if you strike it rich, somehow, miraculously, you can't spend that money safely. You're a wanted fugitive. The moment you flash a high-denomination credit chip, someone recognizes you and suddenly you're floating out of an airlock in a crowded station while children eat candied nutrient paste and watch it twitch. So yes, wealth exists, technically, but for you, it's a rumor, a fantasy, a dangling carrot of fool's gold and false promises. You'll fight for it, bleed for it, kill for it, and most likely you'll never see more than a handful of tarnished credits and a chip mug shaped like an alien fish. Welcome to the spacer economy, where every person dreams of riches and every person dies broke. You might think spacers were anarchists, wild people of the void with no rules, no masters, and no consequences. That's what the stories say, right? Freedom, rebellion, an ocean of opportunity.
You poor gullible planet dweller. Spacer ships had rules, harsh ones, written ones. They called them articles, and if you broke them, the punishment was swift, loud, and frequently involved cables, blood, and the public humiliation of screaming into the void while your crewmates placed bets on how long you'd last. Let's begin with the basics. Don't steal from your crewmates. Yes, this is somehow different from stealing from strangers. Plunder from a cargo hauler. Fine. Borrow a nutrient bar from scraps without asking? Suddenly you're tied to a conduit and learning what plasma burn tastes like. Caught cheating at cards? That's a flogging. Fighting without cause? Flogging. Starting a mutiny without enough support? Definitely flogging. Talking back to the captain? If you're lucky, flogging. If you're not, it's keel hauling,
which is exactly as fun as it sounds. Let's talk keel hauling. This is where you're tied to a cable, thrown overboard, and dragged beneath the ship's hull. Why? To teach you a lesson. What do you learn? That barnacles are sharp, very sharp. The underside of the ship is like a coral cheese grater, and your skin is the cheese. If you don't get crushed, you come out flayed, bleeding, and quietly reassessing your life choices. For less theatrical offenses, there's marooning. It's exactly what it sounds like. You get dropped off on a desolate moon with a laser pistol and one power cell for reflection. You can hunt strange creatures, signal for help, or just go full existential crisis and eat alien fungus until madness sets in. If someone remembers you later, it's probably just to tell your replacement what not to do. But the real crowd pleaser is the lash. Flogging was the go-to punishment for almost everything. Drunkenness, ironic disobedience, or just bad vibes. The whip, usually a length of energized cable, is a delightful device made of leather straps, sometimes knotted or tipped with bits of metal. You're stripped to the waist, tied down, and turned into a blood-spraying lesson for the rest of the crew. The number of lashes depends on the crime and the mood of the person holding the whip. Some people pass out. Some scream until they can't. Some bite down on a cable and try to pretend they're somewhere else. Somewhere with fewer splinters and more basic human rights. No trial, no appeal, no, please explain your side of the story. The captain or quartermaster hears what happened, nods gravely, and says something like, "Right, 30 lashes and double maintenance duty." And just like that, your back becomes a cautionary tale. And don't even think about insubordination. Rolling your eyes is dangerous. Calling the captain a booze-soaked idiot under your breath is fatal. Questioning orders during combat? Well, that's the sort of thing that earns you a midnight float with a magnetic boot tied to your ankle. Some captains were more lenient, most weren't. Power in the void does strange things to people. Add cheap booze, fear, and a ship full of desperate criminals, and suddenly everyone's yelling, and someone's being nailed by the ear to the bulkhead as a warning. Public punishment was the point. You weren't just hurt, you were displayed. Every person watching was meant to think, "I'd better keep my mouth shut," while also secretly thinking, "I hope I never get caught for my thing." And then there's the psychological stuff. Assigning you to waste recycling duty for a month, making you sleep near the bilge, taking your booze ration away, having you scrub the deck with your jumpsuit. None of it is physically painful, but it breaks something inside you, slowly, quietly. Occasionally someone resists, fights back, tries to argue. They're usually beaten senseless or ejected into the void. The lesson is clear. This isn't freedom. It's just another hierarchy, one with salt in its wounds and no paperwork to slow it down. And if you think discipline makes things safer, it doesn't. It just makes everyone quieter, meaner, and more paranoid. Every person remembers the last punishment, and every person silently wonders when it will be their turn. So no, spacer life wasn't lawless. It was brutally orderly. A floating courtroom where the gavel is a whip and the jury is drunk. You've heard stories about space captains, charismatic rogues, devilishly handsome anti-heroes with quick wits and quicker laser swords. Right, that's not your captain. Your captain is Captain Varnish. Not his real name, just what the crew calls him because of the way his eyes gleam when he's about to commit a felony. Or maybe because he once ate industrial lubricant during a famine and insisted it made him shine inside. The details vary. He wears a hat, a large, ornate, comically excessive hat. Once fine, now space-worn and home to a family of alien mites. He refuses to remove it, even in storms, even while vomiting over the railing. That hat, he says, is his authority. Everyone else says it's slowly absorbing his brain. This person rules with absolute power unless the crew decides otherwise. Spacer ships were often semi-democratic, yes, but mutiny is messy and most people are too tired to stage one unless the captain really pushes it. So for now, he stays in charge through a potent mix of volume, violence, and vintage intimidation. He is judge, jury, and occasional executioner. If you make a mistake, he doesn't yell. He leans in and whispers something like, "Would you prefer the lash or a float with magnetic boots in your pockets?" And then he grins. Not because he's joking, but because you think he might be joking. He's clever, but unstable. One minute he's calmly explaining stellar drift. The next, he's howling at a passing comet and accusing it of treason. The crew doesn't question it anymore. We all just silently agree that Captain Varnish is operating on a different wavelength. Possibly haunted, definitely armed. He has rules. Not consistent ones, not written down, but you're expected to know them. Like never mention Earth. Don't whistle on the bridge. Never touch his boots, even if they're on fire. And for the love of the cosmos, don't ask what's in the locked chest under his bunk. His quarters are cluttered with oddities. A cracked mirror, a taxidermy alien parrot missing one eye, a bundle of human hair in a velvet pouch, maps of star systems that don't exist. He sleeps with one eye open and one hand on a laser pistol. Sometimes he talks to himself. Sometimes he gets answers.
Despite everything, he's weirdly competent. He can read the star charts like a book. He knows every hidden asteroid belt between here and Alpha Centauri. He navigates by stars and gut instinct. And somehow, we never crash. Which is probably why he's still in charge. No one else wants the job badly enough to risk a mutiny hangover. He drinks. Not casually, not socially. Professionally. Cheap booze in the morning, grog at noon, captain's elixir. Probably engine coolant at midnight. He never seems drunk, just more himself. Slurred threats, philosophical monologues, interpretive screaming. Occasionally, he's charming. He'll pull out a sonic fiddle and lead the crew in a song. He'll tell a joke so dark it makes the cook choke on his nutrient paste. He'll give you a look, just once, that says, "I see you. I remember when I was like you." And then he'll throw a chair out of the airlock for reasons no one will ever explain. You fear him, but you need him. The void is cruel, and captains are armor. Without one, you're just floating meat with no direction. With him, you're part of something. Even if that something is deeply unstable and smells like burnt insulation and moldy citrus. Every crew member has a captain story. The time he fought off a boarding party with a sonic mop. The time he convinced a corporate cruiser to surrender using only profanity and a dead alien shark. The time he held a funeral for a bottle of cheap booze. No two stories match. None of them are comforting. When the fighting starts, he's the first in. Screaming, laughing, bleeding like it's a hobby. His coat billows dramatically, even in zero-G. You suspect anti-gravity tech, or just very stiff fabric. Either way, it's effective. And when the stellar storm comes, he's at the helm, coat soaked, hat still on, yelling at thunder like it owes him money. Somehow, impossibly, you feel safer with him screaming at the sky than you would with anyone else at the wheel. So yes, the captain is a tyrant, a lunatic, a dangerous, probably cursed person in a very large hat. But he's your lunatic. And out here, that counts for something. Life on a spacer ship is hard, but it's not without structure. And when structure breaks down, say someone drinks all the water, punches the cook, or accidentally lights the fuel stash on fire, there's only one thing left to restore order. Punishment. Creative, public, and loud enough to make everyone briefly regret their own existence. Let's begin with the lash. You've heard of it before. You've possibly felt it before. But here's the thing. Every lash feels personal. It's not a soft whip. It's an energized cable. A festive name for a nightmare device made of leather cords, sometimes tipped with bits of metal, just to keep things interesting. If you're lucky, you pass out before lash 5. If you're unlucky, you remain conscious for all 20 or 30 or however many the captain feels you deserve for snoring too close to his quarters or breathing disrespectfully near his pet cyber chicken. Then there's being tied to the mast.
It's exactly what it sounds like. Arms behind your back, cable around your chest, left to stand there in the harsh light of a nearby star, in the cold of space, in the wind of the solar sails, and in shame. While every person aboard gets a good look at what "don't be this person" looks like. You'll be mocked, you'll be hit with things, you'll learn humility. Maybe. Extra duty is another favorite. You'll be ordered to clean the deck with a rag made of old socks and spite. You'll swab the waste ejection tube. You'll haul crates back and forth for no reason other than to sweat out your insolence. You'll be told it's character building. It's not. It's backbreaking. If you've really messed up, stolen from a crewmate, disrespected the quartermaster, or started a fire as a joke, you might face dunking. That's where they tie you to a cable, lower you over the side, and dunk you into the void, like a particularly stubborn biscuit. Sometimes once, sometimes 12 times. It depends on how entertaining your panic is. Then there's keelholing. Yes, we mentioned it before, and yes, we're mentioning it again, because nothing quite drives the listen home like being dragged under a hull encrusted with alien barnacles while screaming bubbles into the shark-infested vacuum of space. You emerge flayed, salt-soaked, and spiritually hollow, which honestly makes you fit in better. Food punishments are another tool. You want dinner? Too bad you're on nutrient paste ration. Just nutrient paste. No protein block, no stew, just a handful of stone-hard despair and the ambient crunch of regret. If you complain, you get nothing at all. Complain again, you get to serve dinner instead, while everyone avoids eye contact. One classic method is the necklace. That's where they tie your offense around your neck. Literally. Caught stealing a spork, you wear it on a string. Caught with contraband, you wear that too. It's petty, it's theatrical, and it works because no one wants to walk around with a moldy protein bar on their chest while being called Sticky Tom. Shaving punishments are surprisingly common. If you insult an officer or embarrass the captain, your beard gets hacked off in patches or your head gets shaved with a blunt plasma blade and no dignity. Hair is pride. Lose it and you lose status, and also insulation during those cold, deep space shifts. Ever heard of the BGE penalty? It means you're assigned to the worst part of the ship, the bilge and gray water emitter. The wet, dark, slimy underbelly where all the wastewater, rot, and mystery liquids collect. You bail it out with a bucket while holding your breath and trying not to absorb trauma through your skin. Silencing is another tactic. Not gagging, more like a forced vow of silence. You mess up. You don't get to talk for 3 days. Not to defend yourself, not to joke, not to scream. Break the silence, and you're back at the mast. It's amazing how fast people snap when their only outlet is staring at a bulkhead and thinking about what they've done. For more serious infractions, real mutinous behavior, the crew votes. And the punishment is worse. Marooning. A laser pistol, a single power cell, and a barren rock with no exits. You can shoot alien game. You can shoot yourself. Either way, you're off the payroll. Of course, not all punishments are official. Sometimes you just find your pod missing, your boots gone, your nutrient paste, oddly saltier than usual. Spacers are creative.
Spacers hold grudges, and spacers know how to teach lessons that don't involve cables or fire. Just long, cold isolation and whispered rumors. But the cruelest punishment? Being ignored. You step out of line badly enough, and they don't whip you. They pretend you don't exist. No eye contact, no food, no speech. You become a ghost aboard your own ship, walking silently among people who look through you like you're a hologram. So no, spacer ships weren't lawless. They just enforced the law with alien barnacles, cables, and psychological warfare. And if you think that sounds harsh, you're not wrong. But it does keep the crew in line. Mostly. Eventually, every spacer crew hits a point where someone looks around, sighs deeply, and says, you know what, maybe we don't have to be screamed at by a madman in an ornate hat while eating rat stew. This, dear listener, is called mutiny. It starts slowly, quiet grumbles, long, tired stares, a few too many accidental elbow jabs in the captain's direction. Someone starts using the word alternative leadership. Someone else starts sharpening a knife a little too loudly.
The ship's mood turns from measurable to miserable, but also calculating. Why mutiny? So many reasons. The captain's gotten too cruel. The nutrient paste has gone rancid again. The latest salvage haul was suspiciously light, and the quartermaster is wearing a new pair of boots made from what might be human skin. Or maybe it's just been 3 months since anyone has had a sonic shower, and your sense of teamwork has finally died. Sometimes the final straw is stupid. Maybe the captain punished someone for sneezing. Maybe he threw your only star chart overboard because he heard voices in the parchment. Maybe he renamed the ship the Screaming Lettuce and insisted you all refer to yourselves as vegetables. But whatever the spark, it eventually ignites, and you find yourself in a secret meeting behind some cargo containers, whispering with people who haven't agreed on anything except that they all hate this. There are 2 kinds of mutiny: the smart kind, and the kind that ends with you hanging upside down by your ankles while the captain lectures your corpse. The smart kind involves planning, timing, and not trying it in the middle of a radiation storm while half the crew is drunk and the other half is vomiting. Step 1. Gather allies quietly, carefully. You need the cook, the gunner, the person with the keys to the weapons locker, and absolutely do not tell the ship's cyber parrot. That thing's a snitch. Step 2. Wait for the moment. Maybe it's when the captain's passed out at his cabin. Maybe it's during battle when chaos already reigns. Maybe it's when he climbs the comms tower to yell at distant stars and nobody's really watching. Timing is everything, especially when lives and limbs are on the line. The actual mutiny: loud, fast, brutal. You rush the captain. You subdue his loyalists. There's yelling, punching, the occasional misfire from a laser pistol. Someone accidentally shoots a barrel. Someone else accidentally shoots themselves. But if you win, if you pull it off, suddenly the ship is yours. And now comes the fun part. What do you do with the captain? Some crews maroon him. Others just kill him and move on. Sometimes, if he was merely slightly insane, you drop him at the nearest space station and warp away before he regains his sense of vengeance. If he was deeply insane, you set fire to his hat first, just to be safe. After the mutiny, there is a honeymoon period. Spirits are high. Democracy rules. Meals are shared. No one screams when someone sneezes. For 3 glorious days, everything feels almost civilized. Then someone disagrees with the new leadership. Someone doesn't pull their weight. The cheap booze runs low. And you start to hear those whispers again. Because here's the thing. Once mutiny becomes an option, it never really goes away. It's always lingering in the background. Every captain knows it. Every crew member thinks about it. Every decision made after the first mutiny is filtered through the memory of how easy it was to throw someone out of an airlock and call it progress. You've replaced one tyrant with a committee of smaller tyrants. Everyone wants to be in charge. No one wants to do the boring stuff like keeping the solar sails intact or not flying directly into asteroid fields. The same resentment starts to build, the same bitterness, and soon enough, the knives are out again. Mutiny isn't freedom. It's just reorganization by bloodshed. But for a brief shining moment, it feels like justice until it's your turn to wear the hat. After weeks in space, soaked, blistered, mite-ridden, and bleeding from somewhere, you finally see a station, a port, civilization, buildings that don't creak, food that didn't come from a replicator, solid ground that doesn't move beneath you. You're ecstatic. That's your first mistake. Spacers don't exactly receive warm welcomes. Most stations hate you. Some tolerate you. A rare few actively cater to you, but those tend to be lawless dens of sin where you can trade a rusty bolt for a drink and get stabbed for making eye contact with someone's cybergoat. Your ship limps into the docking bay like a dying animal, and you spill onto the concourse with the rest of the crew. Eyes squinting, legs wobbling, faces crusted with recycled sweat and secrets. You stink. Everyone notices. People cross the street. Cleaning drones avoid you. The first stop? The bar, always. You need cheap booze and you need it now. You find the nearest dive with a roof and a vague smell of fermented synthetics. Shove your way through the door and begin the time-honored spacer tradition of drinking until your last coherent memory involves a broken sonic harp and someone shouting, "Marry me or fight me."
Bars are where spacers celebrate and self-destruct. You drink, you gamble, you insult someone's hat, and find yourself dodging a stool. Some stations have rules, others don't. Either way, the bar ends with someone bleeding and someone else dancing on a table with a bottle in each hand and no trousers. You might try to buy things, clothing, weapons, provisions. Your boots have holes. Your jumpsuit has mites. You want to trade your hard-earned credits for something soft, dry, and not alive. But inflation hits hard in space stations. One decent jacket costs half your cut, and that's assuming you weren't paid in counterfeit credit chips or cursed alien jewelry. Then there's romance, or what passes for it. Brothels exist. Most are disease-forward, others are simply scams. You hand over a credit chip and get 5 minutes in a room with a bucket and a curtain.
Fall in love if you must, but don't expect it to last past sunrise, especially if your name is already on the do not admit list. If you're smart, you visit the fence, the person who can sell your loot without asking too many questions. Problem is, every spacer visits the fence, and they all want top price, and none of them trust each other. You leave with half what you hoped for, a suspiciously light data chip of credits, and the realization that your stolen alien gem is probably glass. Trouble finds you quickly. Spacers are not known for subtlety. Someone recognizes your ship. Someone's brother was on the last one you raided. Someone else just doesn't like your face. You spend a lot of your shore leave running, hiding, or punching someone into a cargo container and sprinting for the docking bay. In more lawful stations, security patrols the concourses. You spot corporate security and immediately pretend you're a traveling musician or a lost deep space fisherman. They rarely believe you. Some demand bribes. Others just draw their stun batons and ask if you'd prefer a holding cell or public shaming. It's a real choose-your-own-misery adventure. You might visit the market, buy a synth mango, a sweet roll, a chunk of dried protein that doesn't smell like feet. It's heaven. It's also a trap. One wrong bump and your credit chip is gone. Or someone accuses you of theft, and suddenly you're holding an alien coconut like it's contraband, and everyone's yelling. Some spacers go missing in port. They drink too much, get robbed, join another crew, or just wander off into the underlevels after claiming they saw a vision in the glowing fungus. You'll hear stories. You'll assume they died. You'll probably be right. There's always someone selling magical protection. A charm, an alien feather, a vial of murky liquid that keeps away void sharks and curses. You buy it. You wear it. You still get bit by a cybercrab, robbed by a child, and punched by a nun. But you feel safer, and that's what counts. And when your credit chip is gone, your boots are worse, and your headache is louder than your regrets, it's time to stumble back to the ship. Hungover, injured, emotionally hollow, but still technically alive. Ports of call offer no rest, only new flavors of chaos. You don't come ashore to relax. You come ashore to remember why you left civilization in the first place. And next time, you'll probably get stabbed over something even dumber, like a banana. So somehow, against every odd, every plasma bolt, every alien disease, and every questionable stew, you've survived. You've grown old in space. Your bones creak louder than the ship's hull. Your teeth are mostly gone. Your back is a question mark. And you're still breathing barely. Congratulations. It's time to retire. Which sounds nice, right? A peaceful life, on a terraformed moon, a small cottage, a warm fusion fire, maybe a cyber dog, maybe two, perhaps a hammock that doesn't threaten to kill you in your sleep. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because spacer retirement is not that. First, let's talk about money. You probably don't have any. Whatever salvage you managed to steal you spent long ago on cheap booze, gambling, or someone named Ruby, who almost certainly wasn't. You might have a pouch of credits stashed in your boot, but when you open it, you find mold, 2 bent buttons, and a corporate script that's actually chocolate. There's no pension, no spacer union, no savings plan, no trust fund, no generous letter from HR thanking you for your 30 years of stabbing. You have what you carried, and what you carried was mostly trauma and a suspicious rash. Some spacers settle down in quiet towns under fake names. They pretend to be hydroponic farmers or merchants. They grow beards, speak softly, and try not to flinch every time someone drops a spanner. You ask about their past, and they change the subject. You ask again, and they disappear into the biodomed woods.
Others return to the spacer-friendly asteroid bases, lawless little patches of rock where nobody asks questions and everyone smells like stale synth ale and unresolved guilt. You can live there if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, someone recognizes you. Someone who remembers that time you double-crossed their cousin over a barrel of refined fuel and a cyber goat. A few dream bigger, buying land on a newly colonized planet, starting farms, opening bars. These dreams last until the first bad harvest, the first tax collector, or the realization that running a bar means dealing with drunk people, something you swore you'd never do again after that one night on Titan involving 6 mugs, 1 alien gem, and a live ferret. Some try to write their memoirs. Most can't read, let alone write, so they dictate their life story to someone with a stylus, and it turns into a confusing, blood-soaked mess of half-truth tales and deeply incriminating details. It's published under a pseudonym. It sells poorly, but a few readers start to wonder, was that you? But most spacers don't make it this far. You're the exception, the lucky one, which is unsettling because your body feels like it's held together by cheap cybernetics and superstition. You wake up to phantom laser fights in your dreams. You sneeze and throw out your shoulder. You're too tired to be feared and too haunted to be happy. Friends gone, buried in space, lost, or worse, settled with families, tiny hab units, and suspiciously normal lives. You visit them once and their children stare at you like you crawled out of a wrecked spaceship. You try to tell a story. They ask why there's a plasma knife in your boot. You'll always be looking over your shoulder. Bounties don't expire, especially if you are good at being a spacer. Some young bounty hunter might knock on your door one day, bright-eyed and full of foolish purpose. He calls you sir. You pretend to be deaf. He calls you captain. You sigh and reach for your rusty laser pistol. Some spacers die peacefully in their beds, surrounded by cybercats with a bottle of something strong and the stars visible from their window.
Their last words are usually a joke or a curse or something poetic about nebulae. Most die on a cot in a back alley, whispering to ghosts. The truth is, spacer retirement is mostly waiting. Waiting for death, waiting for revenge, waiting for the void to call you back. Because the void never really lets go. It's still in your blood, in your bones, in your cough. You listen for the hum of starships and the clang of docking clamps, even when you're 100 miles inland. And sometimes, just sometimes, you catch yourself walking toward the spaceport, limping, muttering, coat flapping, looking for a ship, a crew, a second chance. But the cosmos doesn't want you now. It's already replaced you. You're old, broken, forgotten, but you made it, which in this profession is about as close to glory as you'll ever get. So you've imagined the helmet, the coat, the swagger. You've pictured yourself standing on the bridge, one boot propped against the console, staring into a nebula like you owned the galaxy. Maybe you even whispered a space shanty to yourself once or twice, just to feel something. Now you know better. You wouldn't last a day. Not because you're soft, not because you can't throw a punch, or hold your breath, or tolerate a little blood, but because this life, the real spacer life, is designed to grind people down to radiation-cured, half-mad husks who cough up coolant and smile while doing it. You'd board the ship and immediately gag from the smell of recycled air. Within an hour, you'd be space-sick, bruised, and deeply unsure of who just called you Meat Boy. By nightfall, your pod would collapse. You'd be ankle-deep in bilge, and someone would have threatened you with a spork. You'd get your first ration, nutrient paste and salt-cured protein, and realize your teeth weren't ready. You'd get your first injury and meet the ship's medtech, who greets you with a rusty laser scalpel and an expression that says, "You'll probably die, but let's make it a surprise." You'd think, at least there's salvage.
Then you'd see that the loot is 4 bolts of damp synth linen and a barrel of spoiled lubricant. You'd consider mutiny, only to discover it's already happened twice this month and nobody remembers who's captain anymore. The ship's just drifting on habit and body odor. By the time battle came, you'd still be holding the laser pistol someone gave you with the safety on backwards. You'd try to stab someone and drop your knife. You'd scream, they'd scream. A plasma bolt would hit somewhere nearby and you'd end up half-deaf and fully reconsidering your life choices. You'd think about jumping overboard, but even the void is dangerous, full of void sharks, cosmic horrors, and judgment. So you'd sit down on a damp crate surrounded by people who haven't blinked in days and try not to cry in front of the one-eyed cyber rat that's clearly sizing you up. Because spacer life isn't freedom. It's hunger, disease, pain, fear, and above all, filth. So much filth inside your boots, in your mouth, in your dreams. You don't get used to it. You just stop noticing, which, in its own horrible way, is worse. So no, you wouldn't last. Not a day, not an hour, not past the moment someone hands you a sonic mop and points at a puddle that's definitely not coolant. And that's okay, because tonight you're not on a ship. You're not standing on splintered deck plates under a cloud of mites and cheap booze breath. You're in bed, safe, clean, horizontal, with a roof, with soap, with the confidence that no one will threaten you with keel-holing if you sneeze too loudly. So, close your eyes, let your muscles relax, breathe deep. You're not a spacer, and thank the stars for that. So you're planning to retire, are you? That's cute, because almost no spacers retire. Not in the way people retire from normal jobs, with pensions, a parting cake, and a farewell data slate signed by people pretending to like you. Now, spacers retire by dying violently, disappearing mysteriously, or being ejected into space in front of a crowd that's mostly there for the snacks. Still, let's explore this fantasy together. Suppose you're the rare breed of spacer who doesn't die of dysentery, laser wounds, void shark teeth, or a mutiny-related misunderstanding. Let's say you've survived storms, sieges, disease, poor decisions, and Captain Varnish's experimental stew. What does retirement look like? Well, first, you have no money. Any credits you ever got were spent instantly on cheap booze, boots, women, gambling, more cheap booze, and that one guy who said he could sell you a pet alien monkey. Your nest egg is a damp pouch containing 3 buttons, a chipped tooth, and a credit chip that might actually be a washer. You don't have property. You don't own a cottage by the sea on a terraformed moon. You don't have land waiting for you in some peaceful colony. What you have is a back permanently hunched from hauling cables and a knee that whistles before it rains. Maybe you try to settle down. Maybe you limp into a quiet station under a fake name like Mr. Spaceworth and pretend to be a hydroponic farmer. You tell the local children that the huge scar across your chest came from a farming accident. They believe you until you scream in your sleep and call the cyberdog First Mate Harold. Some spacers do open bars briefly until someone recognizes them, or they get bored and start stabbing the furniture out of habit. Others become beggars, wandering station concourses and muttering about cursed alien artifacts and how the cyber parrot knew too much. If you're lucky, truly cosmically lucky, you find a quiet stretch of a terraformed moon and just exist. You spend your final years yelling at meteor showers, drinking rainwater, and teaching alien seagulls how to judge people. Your beard grows impressive. Your fingernails do not. You have no family, no inheritance. Your legacy is a rumor, a smear in a poorly written data slate that says, "Local spacer believed dead again." And that's it. No statue, no song, just a vague warning not to drink with anyone missing more than 2 fingers. And yet somehow, you've done what most spacers never do. You aged. You weren't stabbed over cards. You weren't dragged under a hull. You didn't vanish into a nebula during a storm after declaring yourself king of the cosmos in your underpants. You endured. You're alone. You're broke. You creak when you sit. But you're alive, which, in this line of work, is the closest thing to retirement anyone ever gets. So, dream big, spacer. Just don't expect a pension or teeth. You've spent your life robbing ships, drinking yourself halfway into the grave, and dodging laser swords, bullets, and bowel failure. But now the void has caught up with you.
Not in a storm, not in battle, not in a blaze of glory. Now, you got captured. Maybe your ship was too slow. Maybe someone ratted you out. Maybe you got too drunk in a station bar and tried to pay for synthale with a seashell while screaming, "Do you know who I am?" Spoiler, they did. And now you're in a holding cell that smells like wet cables, stale breath, and last week's execution. You're not alone. There are other spacers here, horrified, some sobbing, some sleeping, some carving tiny spaceships out of crusty nutrient paste. No one makes eye contact because everyone knows what's coming, and there's no secret star chart to save you now. The trial is swift, if you can call it a trial. You're paraded into a courtroom filled with corporate lawyers and angry merchants. They read a list of your crimes, longer than the ancient texts, delivered like a grocery list. Murder, theft, illegal salvage, impersonating a corporate officer, loitering with violent intent. You try to speak, maybe crack a joke, maybe shout your innocence, maybe recite a space shanty out of sheer panic. It doesn't matter. The judge isn't impressed. You could have a legendary lawyer's ghost as your counsel, and it still wouldn't matter. You are a spacer, and spacers get ejected. If you're lucky, they eject you quickly. A short trip to the airlock, a whoosh, a few kicks, a gasp, and darkness. If you're unlucky, and let's be honest, you are, it's a long trip and a slow suffocation, with a crowd jeering and someone selling roasted nuts nearby. And if you're really unlucky, they make an example out of you, drawn and quartered by robots, or ejected, cut down, still twitching, then dissected for public enjoyment. Nothing says justice like a child holding his dad's hand while watching a person's intestines meet daylight. Your body is not your own. It might be left hanging in a magnetic cage, dangling from the station docks to warn other would-be spacers. You'll rot in the vacuum, swinging slightly, space birds pecking at your face, while people walk past and say, "Good riddance." If you're famous enough, they might spell your name right in the court records. Maybe. Don't get your hopes up. Most spacers go down in history as some guy or that one with the weird eye. No statues, no poems, just a forgotten skull tossed in a ditch behind the courthouse. And here's the worst part. You knew this was coming. Every spacer does. From the first time you set foot on a stolen ship, you knew there were only 2 exits, death in space or the airlock. You just hoped you'd get space. Something quiet, something quick. Not a public platform and a bored executioner eating salted peanuts. The crowd isn't mourning you. They're not mourning anyone. They're cheering, laughing, taking bets on how long you'll kick. Some of them were robbed by spacers.
Some just need a distraction. Some just want to see someone get ejected who isn't them. You try to be brave, to say something memorable. Tell the void I'll return, or I regret nothing. But what comes out is mostly coughing and a final shaky curse aimed at the person who sold you out for a bag of refined sugar and a clean pair of socks. The airlock door opens, and your story ends the way most do. Not with treasure, not with a song, but with a rope, a snap, and a brief silence before someone in the crowd mutters, "Well, he lasted longer than the last one." And that, not gold, not glory, is the real retirement plan of a spacer. Let's take a moment to reflect. You've survived disease, injury, hunger, mutiny, flogging, and the deeply traumatic experience of watching someone eat hardtack like it was normal food. And yet there's still one final cruelty to address. You were lied to. Everything you thought you knew about spacers, everything pop culture fed you, was a polished, sanitized fantasy designed to sell convention costumes and movie tickets. You imagined freedom, romance, high space adventure. In reality, you got radiation sickness. Let's start with the big one. Hidden treasure, the dream of all dreams. An X on a weathered star chart, a chest full of alien gems, a specific moon, a shovel, maybe a witty alien skeleton nearby. Total fiction. Spacers didn't hide treasure. They spent it instantly on cheap booze, gambling, bad decisions, and worse hygiene. Gold didn't go into a hidden compartment. It went straight to the bar floor. Noble causes, please. Spacers weren't rebels against injustice. They weren't void-faring Robin Hoods. They were thieves, killers, deserters, drunkards, and opportunists. Some were escaped corporate slaves. Some were cast-out colonists. Many just wanted to get paid without ever scrubbing another corporate deck again. There was no grand ideal, just desperation with a plasma cutter. And then there's the charismatic rogue myth, the dashing space captain archetype. Clever, charming, slightly drunk in an endearing way. No, real spacers were drunk in a face-down-in-the-bilge way. Most couldn't read, bathe, or hold a coherent sentence. If someone were A-liner, it was because they'd been punched in both eyes. You probably pictured dramatic space battles, elegant maneuvers, laser sword fights that last 7 minutes and end with a witty quip. In truth, fights were short, brutal, and deeply unpleasant. There was slipping, screaming, biting, accidental shootings, and at least one guy who tried to kill someone with a chair leg. The democracy myth gets tossed around too. Spacers voted, yes, and then they stabbed each other over the results. Leadership changed often, usually by force. Power went to whoever shouted loudest and bled least. Spacer freedom was just lawlessness wearing a borrowed helmet. Spacer ships were not glamorous. They were floating nightmares, cramped, rotting, damp, and full of alien mites. The food was horrifying. The smell was worse. The crew hated each other by week 2. You didn't live on a ship, you survived on it, until the malnutrition took your gums or the med tech took your leg. And those famous spacers, like Captain Blackheart and Calico Jane, half of what's written about them was made up by pamphleteers, corporate historians, and people with nothing better to do than exaggerate. For every real spacer with a legacy, there were 1,000 who died in silence, ejected into the void without a name.
Spacers protecting each other. Rules of engagement. No. Spacers stole from each other constantly. They lied. They abandoned their wounded. Brotherhood lasted until the cheap booze ran out or someone found a shinier plasma knife. Even the fashion is a myth. No perfectly tied bandanas, no pristine leather coats, just sweat-stained jumpsuits, filthy trousers, and whatever you looted from the last person who screamed. If you wore a hat, it was probably moldy. If it had a feather, it was because an alien bird died in it. You probably believed in romance. Fly to a space station, fall in love with a barmaid, leave a legend. The truth? You stumbled ashore drunk, contracted something unmentionable, and were back on the ship before you remembered her name. if you even asked. Star charts, cyber parrots, eye patches, and catchphrases. All inventions. Fun ones, sure, but not real. The only phrase you said often was, "Where's my mug?" followed by, "Don't stab me." And what about freedom, that great spacer promise, the open void answerable to no one? In reality, you answered to your captain, or your quartermaster, or the airlock waiting in the next station. Freedom, in spacer terms, meant dying slightly more creatively than the average corporate drone. So yes, you were lied to. Not just a little, completely, utterly, and thoroughly. And now, as you lie safe in your bed, perhaps drifting off beneath clean sheets and the soft hum of electricity, you can sleep well, knowing one final truth. Being a spacer wasn't romantic. It was just survival, dressed up in other people's clothes. And there you have it. You've made it through the storm. Not the literal one, thankfully, but the long, slow, splinter-filled collapse of your spacer fantasies. You felt the deck plates lurch, smelled the sweat-soaked jumpsuit, tasted the nutrient paste filled with bugs, and now you're still here, in bed, upright, unstabbed. So take a breath. Look around. You're not on a leaking ship in the middle of the asteroid belt. You're in a room, a real room, with a door and insulation. You probably haven't seen a cyber rat in days. You're already winning. You don't have alien mites. Hopefully you're not missing a limb. No one has threatened to flog you for sneezing. You didn't get forced to climb a comms tower in a radiation storm. You've had clean water today. You've had food that wasn't gray. You have soap. Let's not take that for granted. You have soap. Not animal fat and sand in a sack. Real soap. Maybe it even smells like lavender or oat milk or something else no spacer could pronounce. You have teeth, or most of them, and if one falls out, you don't rinse your mouth with cheap booze and scream into the void. You call a dentist who has tools that aren't rusty and doesn't charge you a chicken and a handful of stolen credit chips. You have plumbing. Indoor plumbing. You flush and the horror disappears. You don't walk to the end of a plank with your backside hanging over the void in the fear of slipping into shark-infested space mid-bowel movement. What a luxury! You have a ceiling. No rain dripping on your forehead. No snoring crewmate 18 inches from your ear. No mystery moisture. Just quiet. Dry, civilized, clean, quiet. You didn't sign a blood oath. You weren't flogged for looking at someone's boots. You weren't abandoned on a barren moon with a laser pistol and your own guilt. You're just here on a mattress, probably with a pillow that doesn't contain straw, mold, or old alien mites. You are not a spacer, and thank everything wholly for that. So close your eyes now, planet dweller. Let the horrors of history fade into the distance like a cursed ship disappearing into a nebula. You've learned something tonight, not just about spacers, but about the true value of toothpaste. Sleep tight, you've earned it. And if you dream of the stars, just remember to bring soap.